So I promise you won't be bored today. We'll hopefully be both entertaining and educational. And by the time you leave, you should have hopefully a lot of tools in your toolkit that will help you regardless if you're a governmental entity or a small business or medium-sized business. So let me, if it's all right, just give you an idea as far as Fluid, just so you kind of understand our background a little bit. And I talked a little bit about this in the introduction. We connect people and products through innovation and creativity. And we would hope that that is then carried through to any that we work with and for businesses and organizations. So that word connection, whether that means a transaction, creating a relationship, deepening a constituent and whether it's a county or city type relationship. There's a term of here's where it all flows together. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the psychology of flow, but actually a Russian psychologist decades ago developed a theory of flow. And they talk about, and this is a proven psychological study that has been around for several decades, that flow is the mental state of operation in which a person performing an activity is fully immersed in a feeling of energized focus, full involvement, and enjoyment in the process of the activity. And what I mean by that is when I go mountain biking and when I'm coming down the hill and flying at top speeds, I feel like I'm in a state of flow in the sense of it happens so quickly and there's so much excitement and exertion. And we find that in the workplace that if you love your job, or at least like your job, you can also experience kind of that state of flow. Organizations can be moving in a positive direction with all energies focused on a singular goal and objective and be more successful with that unity and really having things flow in that way. And so that's kind of the underlying kind of culture that we seek to develop. Enough about us, though. I want to kind of get right into the meat of things. I know today we're talking about tools to help cities and businesses increase their online presence. It's a good plug for IBM, but I thought it was kind of funny, typical of what you see in web design of sometimes, whether you're doing it yourself or working with an agency, sometimes they just don't understand business and objectives, and really a good website project that, whether it's working on an existing site or developing a new one, should integrate organizational and business goals. Sometimes, whether you feel like you're proficient in technology or not, we all kind of feel like that. We all kind of feel like the dummy that didn't figure out what the CD-ROM holder was for. And then lastly, when hiring a development firm, if you do use somebody, all very impressive, but do you have any experience of web design? And a little humor there with the spider and creating webs. And so, it's important that you understand as business owners, as organizational leaders, whether it's on the private or public side, what some of the crucial steps are in website development and design and having a website and ensuring that it's successful to meet your organization's goals. So with that, I want to talk through some of the process. We've identified and boiled down website design into 4 areas. First is discovery. Second is the creative element. The third, of course, is programming, and then launch. And it's important with each one of these, and we want to consider these processes of how this will impact ultimately the result at the end of the day. So as you're building a website, and as you're considering what that means for you and your organization, the first thing you do is you don't start designing, you don't start developing, you think, what impact will this have on our organization and our goals? So it's important to understand goals and objectives. What are we seeking to accomplish? Is it to connect with constituents, those living in our area? Is it to bring revenue in for our company? Is it to develop leads so we can then go sell others on our products and services? Are we selling a good directly online? And so it's important to consider whatever spectrum that you're in, that you first identify on the outset what those might be. Secondly, it's to say in this competitive space that we're in, and you could be, I noticed there was a few gentlemen and others in here that were from cities and maybe public entities. Even if you're a city and public entity, you still have competition. For people's competing time and interest, and why would I go to your website, and what value and information would I glean? I live in Draper, Utah, and I've lived there 4 years, and I've probably been to their website 4 or 5 times, which is probably not enough, and I probably should become more aware, but I just haven't been, if Draper's here, I apologize, overly impressed with the information presented to me as somebody that lives in that city. And so it's important to consider who are you competing against, doing a SWOT analysis, as well as, those who we're competing against, even doing some customer interviews to say, if you're an end user of this website, what are you hoping to accomplish? What will meet your needs? And so even doing a little bit of work up front has huge impact later on in the process that we'll show. So, as far as research and discovery, taking a little bit of prep time goes a long way. Another thing is to say, what assets do we have? And just taking a quick inventory of the type of content that you have available, of images, of videos, of rich media that can be used to engage persons. And so whether you have a website or you're looking to do a redesign, that's important, and to understand and know that up front, because that can almost be as time-consuming, gathering, collecting, writing content as developing a website itself. Also, hosting and server setup. Where will this be hosted? This is just, by the way, a quick thought. For most websites, you shouldn't really be paying more than $15 to $25 a month hosting a website. If you're looking to do kind of a shared server, if you don't need any sort of out of this world capacity. So as far as budgeting and planning, if you're looking to work with a hosting company, $15 to $25 is a good range. If you have additional issues or additional needs, you might be in the $75 to $150 range. So it's kind of by means of budgeting what to consider. Lastly, and you've probably heard this, but developing a sitemap. We'll show you what that means here, but knowing how you connect the dots, how you organize content in such a way that it's engaging, intuitive, and appealing. Does anyone in here have a favorite website they'd like to visit, by the show of hands? Anyone here have a favorite website they like to visit, or just you like it because it's clean, simple, easy to use? Come on, I know someone has a website they like to go to. Do none of you use the internet?
Provo City has a really good website for a government agency.
Good. Maybe give us 2 or 3 takeaways. What is it that makes it simple or easy to use? What do you like about it?
Simple, clean design. It's not cluttered.
Mm-hmm.
Good access to links and
Mm-hmm.
information. There's essential information on the homepage,
Mm-hmm.
but not too much information.
Mm-hmm.
But I just like the look and feel. It's very intuitive.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to work with. It just, as a designer myself,
Yeah.
I like the look and feel of it.
Good. Provo City. We should go visit there. I might bring up another example, and I know this one's overused, so I apologize. But it's interesting in the websites that we design and develop. I continue to hear, well, just do Apple's website. Just do what they did. And it's interesting. Of course, you wouldn't just copy their website, because there's of course different needs and interests. But it's interesting if you come, and I might just show you a few elements here as far as planning goes. But from user navigation and accessibility, you notice their navigation, fairly simple. You have several options across the top of main product lines. There's a simple search bar. Notice how there's no home button. Sometimes when we design for government agencies and other organizations, that is a critique, and they'll say, well, where's the home button? We say, well, you don't need one. Well, how will people know how to get back to the home page? And we continually try to educate that, I apologize. We continually try to educate that, your logo typically represents that, and people have the back button, and they're used to it. But one other thing that Apple does really well is they give you something that is appealing, that you want to buy. That large content area, the messaging there, is programmed to enhance their brand image in your eyes. And so to think, that real estate on the home page is so crucial, and what can you do to take advantage of that? And how can you highlight certain things about your organization or features that a user should be considering? And so that home page area is so crucial, and you'll just want to consider, what type of content will you feature there? So just a quick aside. Continuing forward, and I'll show you an example here shortly, but we talk about sitemap, information architecture. I don't know, anyone in here an architect or an engineer? In architecture and engineer, you typically, prior to, of course, a general contractor building a building, you're doing the design work and understanding how will all the pieces, parts, elements come together. What will this look like first on paper, of course, before it's constructed? And doing that for a website design is just as crucial. And so whether you use software yourself or sketch it out on a piece of paper, it's important to understand before you begin design what are some of the crucial elements that need to be involved, what type of aspects of the home page or functionality or features are needed versus a contact page versus a services and products page. And I'll show you an example shortly. Use some usability diagrams to say when somebody comes to the home page of your website and they're then trying to find information, what does that usability look like for them? You know, from the home page, where do they go next? Where do they go next? And how do they ultimately find the information that they're seeking, and how quickly can they get there? Can they do it in simply 2 clicks, in 3? And how can we shorten that amount of time that they're looking for information on your website? So some of those usability diagrams to say, if I'm using the city as an example, if I'm a constituent of the city versus a business organization seeking to do business with the city versus some other political entity, how will I use the website in a variety of ways, and what does that look like? And then lastly, to be able to plan out development. I'll talk through some options here a little later, but to say what type of technology will we use to develop our website. There's a lot of options, and it's important that you choose the one that best meets the needs of your organization. Now, with this, I wanted to showcase a project that we've actually worked on for the better part of this last year. The Governor's Office of Economic Development is currently redoing their website, and we've been able to partner with them since earlier this year in spring. And I just wanted to show you a few things, and I'll, throughout this presentation, showcase that. We started this same process, and to give you an example or an idea, we provided some documentation, but this is what was developed after meeting of understanding goals, objectives, and doing some planning. We talked about, their current website, some of what the issues were, that it was too complicated, it was dated, there wasn't clear objectives, and there's too many options, it was cluttered. We talked about some of the goals of the website and what we hoped it would do. We talked about a sitemap and what that would look like and how that would change from how it currently was organized. We talked about some functionality and feature requests. We documented those and made sure that as the website was then designed and developed that we weren't missing anything crucial. And then the actual wireframing piece. So this is what I wanted to show you. So this is how the homepage started. And just as a plug, their website is nearing completion, so you'll be able to see a little bit more here. But the homepage, notice how it has the logo on the upper left, some of the navigation. We talked about rotating feature section as well as some other areas. And it's interesting that you kind of see it from an architectural blueprint standpoint, and it doesn't look, very exciting, but at least helps you capture some of the fundamentals. We talked about various pages and templates and formats and what those would look like, and specified some of that functionality for various pages here. What a news page might contain for them, some of the unique features. A mapping page, the ability to look up incented companies in Utah, business resource centers, as well as other opportunities for people to interact with the state of Utah, in more of a mapping spatial way. Various contact us pages, search results, etc. So you can see that this began as the underpinnings of the website. You can do this yourself. You can sketch it out. You can download software that will help you do that. But this is an important element of the website design process. So I'm going to pick up here. So this is when you get to the fun part, the creative design. And you have options. My recommendation, working for an advertising agency that does dozens of websites every month, is that you do hire a professional designer or somebody that knows how to design professionally. Certainly you can fake it, which is fine, but I think that when you're looking at something that's so visible as your website, which really becomes the face of so many organizations in today's age, that one of the first things somebody will look at is your website. I can't tell you how many meetings I have each day that somebody said, oh yeah, I saw that on your website. And I know that every person I meet face to face already checked this out, as they do you and your organization. And not only do they look at that initially, but they continue to do business with you via your website, whether you give them that opportunity or not. And so it's important that from an aesthetics design perspective, not only are you considering the look and feel of the website, but also how you're organizing information, the user experience, the user interface, and how positive or negative that potentially might be for them. So a couple of steps to consider. Typically you start with some concepts to say, let's just kind of nail the look and feel and kind of mood board and photography. What type of emotions are we trying to convey? And by the way, visuals are a very good thing today. People, because we all have ADHD now programmed into us with the way technology is, people don't typically spend much more than 3 to 4 minutes on a website. They don't do as much reading in regards to online articles. It's interesting now, people, and there's some studies, I unfortunately didn't have a slide on that, but people used to spend, as far as on a home page, they would even spend up to 6 minutes just looking at an organization about 5 years ago. And 2013, a study that was done from UCLA, it says that you really have about 6 seconds when somebody hits your website to either capture their attention or they move on. And so in those 6 seconds, what are you presenting? And how meaningful will that content be for the audience visiting? So it's important to make sure not only does it look great, but it functions well and really communicates the mood, the emotion via visual images and photography. And so rich media is so proven to engage people over just copy. It doesn't mean you don't have any written words on your website. You need to have a good balance, but it's important to engage people and ensure that the tone that you communicate with the written word is also shown through on the photography, the videos, and other visual imagery that you have. Enough on that. So as those concepts are developed, you review that design, you share that with stakeholders in the organization. I can tell you there's nothing more frustrating developing a website where you continue down a certain path that you think is the right direction, forgetting to include all of the necessary owners or stakeholders to get to a point, and they then step into the project midstream and say, no, you're doing this all wrong. Why are we going down this direction? And there's nothing more frustrating for you if you're owning that website development project to get to that point and say, well, we should have had this conversation 2 months ago. And so something to consider, involving the right people up front early on. Of course, as you get down to the production phase, really once you nail a look and feel and you start with the home page, then you're saying, how does this then look on a secondary or tertiary page? Let's go through our wireframe or our blueprints and say, let's design out each one of these templates. And typically the cost of a website doesn't come in how many pages you have. You could have hundreds and hundreds of pages, but as long as there's 7 or 8 or 9 unique templates that are being designed and then developed, your website doesn't cost more than 7 to 8 to 9 unique pages. So really you, in today's age of content management systems, should be able to replicate and duplicate as many layouts as you need and have the ability to customize and personalize each one of those. So in regards to creative design, we wanted to show you, so when we first did that wireframe, and then as we went through the competitive bidding process for GOA's website, as part of that we provided just a couple of concepts to say, based on what we understand your needs to be, this is what we're thinking. And I don't know if any of you have been to GOA's website, but we thought it was an improvement. As you can see, there's navigation across the top. There's some other tertiary navigation above that. It highlighted some news events. It had a feature area and then a footer. And it was fairly simple, and we thought it was fairly clean design as well. There was another iteration or two that we shared with them. This is just showing, just another execution of that main slider area and image, and then one more. And as you can see here, where it's a little bit more of a darker background, has a cityscape, and showcases, we thought, the Governor's Office of Economic Development in a positive way. Well, they didn't go with any of these, which is fine. We did win the bid, but then we said, okay, let's roll up our sleeves and get serious and begin designing what this website should look like. And so going from the wireframe and the site map and architecture to here, and then ultimately what was chosen as far as their home page is what I'll show you next, which I think was a great improvement. This is what will be deployed when the new website goes live here November 15th. So the home page, it changed a little bit. You'll notice in the upper left, there's the logo. There's some horizontal line or vertical diagonal lines kind of happening throughout the site, some subtle patterns over these images. And you can see that that secondary navigation, there's language and some news. I know it's probably harder to read from the back, but they really wanted to have a nice clean area that they could present images throughout Utah that represent not only the recreational environment but the business environment, and having a nice call to action and feature. This piece here where you can see, I don't know if my cursor will show, but they had several featured areas where they still have events and news, but they have an ability now to have everything modular where they can embed video right there on some of these featured areas. And they're able to, right now those are kind of 6 different compartments, and they can rearrange the blocks and tiles and change things. Of course, there's additional information on the home page about Governor Herbert and GOED, et cetera, but this was kind of the direction that they went, and the website kind of takes its theme from here. Anyway, you can kind of see at least some of the evolution in that sometimes you don't get it right the first time, but working at it collaboratively hopefully produces a better end result. But before we go on, I want to talk through programming and preparing to launch. Questions, thoughts, anything that's on your mind as we go through. I don't want to have anyone feel that they can't ask a question that's pressing on their mind. Okay. Save them to the end if you have any. In regards to programming, it's important to look at some of the major features of the website to say, okay, as we identify some of the needs and complexity of websites, and every website has something slightly different, let's map out the timeline of what will be required to develop that. And so again, whether you're doing that in-house, whether you're working with a professional design and development agency, it's important to have a mapped out timeline, understand what that looks like, and so as you begin to program, you have some milestones along the way. And the hope is potentially as the website is being finished and preparing to go live, you might have an ability to begin being trained on the CMS, inserting content, and just making sure that overall you're excited that it's working as it needs to. In the construction industry, there's a kind of a way of building a building called design build. Any of you familiar with that? Kind of the design build model. Website development is much the same way. You have to be flexible. So what you decide in the architectural blueprints and then ultimately confirm in the design very well may change functionally when the building or the website's constructed. And so it's important to have that flexibility and not be so rigid, and know that as you begin to put content, and you may say, well, that doesn't work there. We thought it would, but because of what we have, let's maybe change this and modify this slightly. So that's important to consider. Lastly, as you're preparing to do internal quality assurance and testing, both with the developers as well as yourself, from an SEO standpoint, I'm not sure how many of you have background as far as in digital or online marketing, but there's quite a bit that goes into a website development project that has very positive implications for you as an organization in regards to how you rank online in Google. Now, some of you, may be a city or a governmental organization. That may not be as crucial, but people know when to look for you for certain things, but there's also situations that they may say, well, how do I start a business in Provo, Utah? And if your website is built correctly as a .gov organization, you should be popping right up. And not only should you rank high, but you should be presenting content that would easily help the visitor to the website to be able to learn how to start a business. As a organization or on the private side, of course, getting more people's attention, creating awareness for your organization, developing leads, potentially selling products on or offline, your website through SEO potentially can be a lead generator and really a revenue driver. We're a B2B organization. We sell our services to businesses, but I can't tell you how many tens of thousands of dollars that our website has actually returned back to us in our investment because we've used it in that way, where for so much of the work that we do, people go into Google and say, digital marketing agencies, Utah, companies, for website development. and we're at the top of the list. People select us, call us, email us, fill out a form, and we, glean new business from that. And I'm sure there's application for you in that sense as well. So something to consider if you're not proficient in online marketing or SEO, find someone that is. Work with an expert, whether it's a friend or someone that you hire professionally. Lastly, this is, let me just go back one more. In regards to programming, some code cleanup, cross-browser compatibility testing. Raise your hand. We're going to take a quick poll. If you use Internet Explorer as your main browser, show by the uplifted hand. What about Chrome? Firefox? Safari? Something else? It's interesting now. All of those are good browsers. Microsoft Internet Explorer, it's interesting, but it's begun to be phased out a little bit as far as a common and popular browser. It's not a bad browser, but it's interesting as you'll learn when you develop a website, it's the hardest browser to develop for by far, by 10 times the amount. So typically you develop a website initially for Chrome, Safari, Firefox, some of those main browsers, and you do it in the same way. And then by the time you finish all that development, then you go back and recode everything for Internet Explorer, which is fine. But just so you're aware, Internet Explorer is just a little bit harder from a development standpoint to make sure that things display the same way. So that's something to be aware of. The other statistic to be aware of, in today's age, people, of course, smartphones and tablets and iPads and everything in between are very, very much a common way of life. And it's right now, kind of mid to late 2013, about 35% of all websites are accessed from a mobile or tablet device. In less than a year from now, and these are the best statistics I can give you from the industry, but in less than a year from now, by about mid-2014, they project that the trajectory we're on, more than 50% of websites will be accessed by a mobile device first. And so if your website isn't responsive in nature, if it's not mobile friendly, if it doesn't automatically scale to the right dimensions and proportions, that's something to consider. It doesn't mean you have to start over with your website, you have to redesign everything, but you should design for it. And you can add on a mobile or responsive version. So let me show you just really quickly what that looks like. I'm just going to, for example, come to General Electric's website. They do a wonderful job of demonstrating how responsive should be. Whether you like their design or not, notice there's quite a bit going on. They have selecting the region, they have some navigation at the top, they have this large rotating image, they have some statistics here. But notice when I'm in kind of full view here, but as I begin to move in, notice how the elements begin to respond to that. And notice how things begin to collapse. And it actually begins to get a little simpler. And look at the navigation right now, and look at it as you get a little bit smaller. Notice how it actually collapses to what's become a standard 3 bars in the word menu. And you can then access it in a slightly different way. So what was originally multiple columns across a larger viewpoint or vantage, how it collapses to become something much simpler.
So question, is this intended to be immediate solution for mobile?
Yeah, so if you go there on your mobile phone, what you're going to see is that. If you go there on an iPad, you're going to see something between the desktop version and the mobile version. And that's how websites can and should be. That's kind of the latest way in technology in developing websites, is to have them be fully responsive. And if your website's not, it doesn't mean that you're going to tick everybody off that comes to your site, but you're most likely losing audience share. You most likely are frustrating people, and they may not be having the optimal experience on your website.
Is it more efficient to produce as well? Because I'm thinking it might be, because you're not having to develop more than one solution. You don't have to develop a standard browser presence and a mobile presence separately.
Yeah, so you make a great point. About 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, we used to develop websites and then a mobile version of the website. That's kind of old nomenclature and way of thinking. Now we develop one website that's responsive, and it responds to the browser size. So again, something to consider. This with any website development project that you do from here on out, it ought to be responsive. It ought to be mobile friendly and ready. So enough said on that. And then lastly, you want to make sure whether you're the developer, the project lead, that you can train or have trained those in your staff that will be helping administer content. Again, giving others in the organization responsibility for the website is a good thing in as much as you have and maintain some control. And so typically with most website frameworks or content management systems, you have the ability to have administrators, and below them where others can be in roles where they can edit certain pages and sections, where they're able to submit content changes only to go to you or others for approval. So it's important to involve others to train them on how to use it effectively, but also have some measures to ensure that something doesn't get published that would embarrass the organization. And then just finalizing content there. So lastly, in preparation for launch, in preparation for launch, making sure you have analytics of some sort. Google's free, it's very powerful. You almost want to do that as a standard. There's security in place, SEO plugins, and then once you do launch, those next couple of days you just want to carefully monitor the site and see if there's any outstanding issues as it's moved to the new URL. So with that, most website development companies you work with will give you a warranty period to say, if anything goes wrong in these next several weeks or months or over the next year's period, we'll fix it, as long as it's part of that original scope and agreement. And so it's important to just make sure that, that your website is not only supported from a technical standpoint from those who developed it, but you kind of understand what those agreements are. So I'm going to just give you a few thoughts in regards to recommended website platforms. I recognize that we probably have a cross-section of very different needs and maybe budgets, as well as do I do it in-house, do I hire somebody? So I'm just going to give you some ideas, and I'd love any feedback from the group and maybe even some other recommendations. Do it yourself. Now, I don't recommend this for many organizations, but if you're a startup and you're bootstrapping it, not a bad option. Hopefully it's not your end-all be-all website, but it's a way just to get a presence online. There's some do-it-yourself website softwares that are free to a certain extent. Weebly, Moonfruit, Wix.com. They'll give you a decent product that you can utilize. Now there's going to be limitations. You can't do many customized things, but it's a great option for low budget and for somebody who isn't skilled in web development. WordPress, and the reason I have it separate, it's interesting. It's actually the most popular website framework in the world. There's hundreds of millions of websites built on WordPress. In fact, NASA uses WordPress for its website, which is huge, hundreds and thousands of pages. Not saying that that's the only solution, but it is a good solution for beginners in one way that can use purchase templates, where you can actually go purchase a WordPress template that you like and then just make a few slight modifications. But you can then begin to get to more enterprise level websites, and I would definitely classify GoEd's website. It's very customizable, very built in a unique way to craft it and to meet their needs. But there's a spectrum within WordPress where you can kind of get the out of the box, buy a template and you're good to go, versus more of a customizable solution that a web development firm can work with you on. Magento, from an e-commerce platform, if you're looking to sell a product or good, it is the most popular and well-used e-commerce platform that you can have out of the box for selling, being able to sell products directly online. And then there's some other advanced custom build solutions such as CodeIgniter, CakePHP, and there's a myriad of other custom solutions from there that perhaps don't have a name because it's unique to that organization. So what usually the rule of thumb is, if you use something like Magento or WordPress or others that are more out-of-the-box frameworks that can then be highly customized, you just get to the point to say, is everything we're doing so unique and custom that it's causing us to rewrite the framework that we're using? If you're changing it so much to a level that it's almost goes against the nature of the framework you're using, you probably should go to a more custom solution. But if you're merely customizing the experience and templates that you're using and adding a lot of additional features, some of these out-of-the-box platforms are still a good choice. Questions on this? Any comments or feedback in regards to others' experience? Again, this is by no means all-inclusive. This is just, to give you some ideas to get started.
If you hired a professional, what's the average per page or cost?
So I don't know if I'll give you a per page cost, but let me do this. If you're looking to build a very simple, well, not simple, but a custom managed website that had some good features but didn't do anything too difficult or crazy, you're probably in about the $5,000 to $15,000 range, hiring a professional firm. If you're looking to do something a little bit more moderately aggressive, maybe you're integrating with some software within the website, maybe you're selling products online, and there's just a lot more to do in design, you're most likely in that probably $15,000 to $35,000 range. When you get to more of the enterprise level websites, and then cost goes up from there, you can be anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000, and then some website projects, when it's truly more software related as a service, you can be in the $500,000 to $1 million range. So,
As we enter more and more integration of video in our presentations online,
yeah.
can you comment a little bit about the problem that we're experiencing with Flash and HTML5 or whatever you know?
Great point. So the statement is Flash is dead, which is true. And in fact, Apple really was one of the driving forces behind Flash dying. Adobe and Apple don't really get along. And because not only do they have some competing services and software, but I think Apple was had the foresight to say Flash is such a heavy technology that takes too much memory, and it's just kind of a heavy weight that isn't needed. And so Apple was already pushing for HTML5. And I'll explain that a little bit more, but it's interesting, Apple never supported Flash on an iPad or an iPhone because they just wanted to have Adobe say, okay, we get it, which is what happened about a year ago. And Adobe said, okay, we're not going to be focusing on Flash as far as development anymore. Moving forward, we'll be moving away from that. And so some websites in the past were developed in Flash, or certain portions of the website. If you have a website that's designed primarily in Flash, you should be thinking about doing something different, because it won't be supported very much longer, and it's not supported by many platforms. Now, it's not to say that the animation, it completely goes away. It's not that you can't do fun and creative things that are interactive or host rich media or videos and such. HTML5 is really the new nomenclature. It's a lot lighter, it's a little bit more quick on its feet, and it's a way that developers can do and mimic some of that same animation that people loved in Flash, but they can do it in a more, not only mobile-friendly type way, but as often is very much more efficient. And so there's a lot of neat things that you can do with HTML5. And in regards to video, let me just speak on that for a moment. You can host the videos that you want to showcase on your website yourself, and you can add them to your server, but your server speed and its efficiency may be such that the load time is dragging. And so my recommendation, and for all companies we work with, recommend that either Vimeo or YouTube or a professional video hosting service, you put them there first, and there's a lot of SEO and social implications for that, and then you embed them directly onto your website. Now, you lose a little bit of autonomy, but there's enough liberty that Vimeo and YouTube give you that you can make it so it's a little bit more custom branded and really looks nice.
What about copyright, though?
So it's your video. You upload it, and you can embed that video on your website without having any issues.
No, I understand.
Oh.
But what if you want to retain copyright, not let anybody else use your video?
Then you need to look to a more custom solution outside of that.
As far as a player is concerned,
Yeah, so there's custom players that you can, for $100 or $200 a month, use custom platforms and software. You also have the ability to have those videos be private videos on YouTube and Vimeo, and then post that code on your website without people being able to steal it in that regard. But it's interesting today with most rich media, you actually want people to take it. You actually want people to share it, as long as it's tied back to you and you develop and produce the video in such a way with your tags on it. You know, of course, anyone can rip anything off in today's age. We get it. But for you to perpetuate your message and having others sharing that virally, we typically think that's a good thing in the marketing world.
Do you find for organizations, for example, GoEd, that once you turn the website over, do they have a centralized management of the site where you have a webmaster, so forth, or decentralized where certain departments, divisions, so forth, are responsible for a certain area? And what seems to be the trend right now?
Yes. No, I think a little bit of both. You need to have somebody that's an expert there, both on the technical side and managing it, and that ultimately is the owner, whether that's one or two persons. But then to decentralize some of the I guess from an ownership perspective, you want to make sure that the day-to-day, you know, having different departments and organizations updating the website, that there's certain owners of different sections or areas. That way you're more prone to have better content that's more fresh. And so, you know, ultimately, as long as each of those persons are trained and you have one or two persons that are the ultimate owner of the project, or that, you know, kind of becomes that epicenter of, they're the ones that know everything, then internally as an organization, you can really manage it in-house just fine and only be contacting a professional development firm when there's an issue or when you really need some unique features added. So, great question. Let me just go through a few more things that might be helpful. We've already kind of talked through this, so I guess let me answer this question. When should you hire a professional design firm? I would say, and I'm biased, but most of the time. Certainly you can do some things on your own, but because it's so crucial to you, your image, your organization, and the first impression you give almost everyone, it's a good practice to hire somebody that knows professionally what they're doing and be able to work with them in tandem. Now, there's cost associated with it, as we've discussed, but I think that cost is worthwhile. So here's some tips and tools to consider for improving your online presence. Let me walk you through a few of these here. I often preach this before we begin any project, but the goal with any good content management system is to provide consistency for your brand, for the look and feel, making sure that those who are editing the website can't mess it up that much, and that there's consistency in font usage and color, etc. And so often you'll find in website content management system that you're not changing between 7 or 8 or 500 different fonts like you would in Microsoft Word. They typically, you know, kind of have you between 2 or 3 or 4 different versions and various sizes of those, so you have consistency. That way you don't have to worry about that yourself. But you still need to have flexibility, and I think the mark of a good website development is that you can achieve and strike a balance between the two. That flexibility from the standpoint, you should, as a website owner, you know, or somebody that the project's delivered to, really be able to change just about anything. There's some things in the layout that as they're programmed, or maybe in some of the navigation bar, that you don't change, but for the most part you should be able to manage just about every part of the website. Planning and process, I think, are crucial, especially on larger enterprise level websites. We've talked about wireframing or site mapping software. The UX and UI, I don't know if you've heard those terms, but user interface and design, there's people that just specialize in just that. And it's important that those are considered as we've talked about usability diagrams and what experience the user will be having. It's one thing about having a website that functions well or a website that looks good, but if the user has a negative experience almost every time they come, you've failed ultimately in that project. Importance of rich and engaging media. They say that having a video or a picture or some way for a user to interact on your website actually is a 5 times higher likelihood of them continuing to stay on the page and get to know you as an organization or reach out to you. And that multiple of 5 number, I think, is important. Not that you should have a video on every page, but it does help get people engaged and interested. Integrating social media is important. Whether you're feeding your social media feeds through your website or you are, linking to those, people expect that. Typically, they're in the top right header or in the footer of a page. They can be integrated throughout, where you can have a news post or story where people can share it, tweet it, like it, LinkedIn it, whatever that might be. But that's important, and it's important for you to integrate those in the website development project. keeping your content fresh. Anybody ever heard of a Google Spider or a Google web crawler before? Probably most of you have. Anybody know how they determine how frequently they come to your website? Anybody have any idea? So yeah, website traffic helps to a certain extent, but it's really how fresh is your content. One of the reasons Google goes to CNN.com probably well over 100 times a day is because they're posting new content about 100 times or more a day. And if you're posting content about once a month, Google will come and crawl your website about once a month. The more frequently it's coming back and the more content you have on your website, not only is it a better user experience because there's something for them to come to, but Google and ranking and having an online presence are all dependent on not just content for content's sake, but good quality content that's engaging for a user. Think of Google like a human more than ever. So there's no way to game the system. You can't just say, if you put in these certain, keywords and stuff to page here and have certain title tags or whatever that might be, that just means we're going to rank on Google. It doesn't work that way anymore. What Google looks at is to say, how much traffic is this page getting? How authoritative are they perceived by their audience? And then really when I deliver somebody to your website and I've told them, Google's saying, I've told them to come to your website, I've recommended you as a friend that they should come to you if they have a question on website design. And if that person has a bad experience, leaves right away, doesn't engage with you further as a brand, then Google will stop sending you people for website design or whatever that might be. And so Google wants to make sure that the people that it's referring to you as a friend are having a positive experience, because if they're not, they stop referring people to you. And so Google very much is a sophisticated human in that regard. And that's really, when it comes to content, it's better to have high quality content than just to have frequency of content. So if you're thinking, should I be having new blog articles or news pages posted 5 times a week or twice a week? And my comment would be, well, 5 is great, but if you're going to have higher quality for 2 times a week, that's more engaging and actually is meaningful for your audience, only do it twice a week because it means more. Same thing goes for social media content. Couple other thoughts. These are some tools you might want to know. For digital marketing SEO audit tools, go to marketing.greater.com. It's offered by a company called HubSpot we partner with. It's free to anyone. But you go type in your website URL and you'll learn a lot about yourself, or your website, I should say. And it's going to tell you about the things that you're doing well, that you're not doing well, and give you specific instances of how to improve your online presence. Marketing.greater.com. You've heard of probably Nielsen television ratings, right? Alexa does the same thing but online. And so if you're wondering how your website stacks up against others, or the big guns, so to speak, or your competitors, you can go to alexa.com, type in your URL. It will tell you, relatively speaking, how your website ranks against others in regards to traffic, domain authority, and really a lot of those things that Google and other search engines are looking at. And it's interesting, it will actually tell you where your website ranks in regards to every other one in the world. So if you type in ksl.com into Alexa, it's crazy. ksl.com it's like 224. It's only 224 back from the most frequently trafficked websites in the world, which is crazy. They pull that kind of bandwidth daily. So anyway, good thing to look at. Google Analytics, sign up for a free analytics account. And Google Webmaster Tools, as you get more advanced and sophisticated, you can do some limited A/B testing, and there's a lot of things that it will tell you how to correct and improve your website in regards to digital marketing. And then keyword optimization, working with an SEO expert and understanding what that implies and how that will help your site rank and perform. There's one other thing. Now, when you launch a website, that's kind of like you just had this beautiful child, right? If any of you are parents, my wife and I are expecting our 3rd here in April, and we're excited because we've had 2, and when that new baby's born, one of the most special days. Now, I'm not comparing website going live to childbirth, but there are some comparisons, and that is it's so difficult to get a website live. It takes twice as long and it's twice as hard as you would expect. But when it does finally go live, you kind of feels like your baby, and you don't like anyone to call your baby ugly. But it's important to consider when your website goes live, if it looks the same generally speaking, with the same type of content a year from then, you failed. You should be testing and refining your website. If you launch your website and then a month later figure out that 60% of all the traffic that hits your homepage leaves in less than a minute and they don't click on any other page, then you got some issues. And so you need to be carefully studying, analyzing what the data is telling you and making adjustments. And so what you do when your website launches on day 1 should be dramatically different, what day 365 or day 200 look like. So there's some tools for that. You can do quite a bit of landing page optimization. You can actually say, when somebody comes to my website, have 2 or 3 different versions, version A, version B, version C. And let's see how they respond to each one. And you can do that through Google Webmaster Tools and Analytics. I'm going to show you another paid service that you can do that through, where you can actually present a few different options and say, what's the best way for them to respond? What do they like the most? If I move the button here versus here, what does that do? And what does that mean for me as an organization or a business? One of those tools is called Optimizely. It's only $59 a month or $39 a month. I think it's worth it for a lot of organizations and websites. This tool will not only allow you to test multiple versions of various pages on your websites that are crucial to your success, it will actually allow you to say, if somebody pings your website from San Francisco, California versus LA versus China, you can actually show them different content. You can personalize the images, the text presented, and actually have their experience be unique to them. So if they type in XYZ into Google, you can actually have that respond to them and show them a different iteration of your website. That's kind of the advanced version. And so I can give you some ideas and tips on that after. And then there's some software called Crazy Egg. Has anyone heard of Crazy Egg before? What it is heat mapping software. It's to say, when people are on your website, where are they looking at? And Crazy Egg actually provides that data to you. You actually see via heat maps where people are spending the majority of their time on a page. Is it up in the upper left? Is it in the middle area? What are they doing? Where is the eye looking, so to speak? And not only that, but it tells you what are the most effective placements for our most important content. And so Crazy Egg, again, it's another great software that you might consider. So in closing, and we can do some more questions, here's a few of my favorite web design quotes that I hope you enjoy. The site is broken. When I'm on the home page, I click the back button, but it takes me to another site. I've heard these before. Here, I really like Apple's logo, so I've taken their logo and I put our name under it. Make sure it's not too edgy, not too flashy, not too much detail, not too classical, traditional, too complex, exciting, but not all over the place. Efficient but fun, clean, fresh, modern, upbeat, contemporary, high readability, smooth, shapeless, timeless, not outdated but simple. And then lastly, the other website is stealing our business. Can you make it so when somebody types their address, they come to our site? Anyway, just a couple of fun thoughts, and it just as in your business, we have some kind of fun quotables that we take away on some of the projects we work with. So before we close, and I know it's time for lunch, and I respect that, but is there any last questions that you have? And of course, I can answer any question afterwards one-on-one, but any other questions or thoughts for the group?
What are the best strategies you've seen for managing social media? How is it structured within the organization?
So the first thought with social media is most organizations should manage it themselves. They should be doing that rather than another outside organization. Outside organizations, we do this for our clients. We help set strategy. We do customization, provide tools, but we don't try to get in the way to the day-to-day management and response. And so typically you have someone designated as a social media manager if it's possible for one person to do that full or part-time. And as long as they're skilled, or usually my recommendation is whoever your high school or college intern is, have them do it because they know more than you. But to make sure that they represent you as an organization, there's some tools that you can use that aggregate the social media channels like Hootsuite that are free, where you can be listening, you can be responding and posting content from one location. but it's really just about understanding the purpose of social media isn't to push your agenda. The purpose of social media is for you to listen, to respond, and engage with your audience. So if it's all about you, you haven't figured it out yet. It's not. It's about them. And that's really the best advice with social media, is just to make sure you that you're making it about their experience with you and trying to offer something of value rather than trying to look for a cheap sale. So, any other thoughts or questions? Okay, we'll let you get to lunch. Thank you so much. We appreciate your time today.